Hello, everyone.
Hey there, guys.
This is I Don't Know Her, the podcast where we talk about women you've probably never heard of, but should have.
And you will.
And
you
can tell we're a little rusty.
I was going to say, this is Rita.
This is Amanda, and welcome to season 2.
Woo woo.
And we're so excited about the women we brought for you today.
Yeah, we're just excited, period, to be recording again. I mean, it's been a nice long summer. I don't know, short for you, kind of ish.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
So let's just do, we're going to actually time ourselves to make sure that we don't talk too long.
Yeah, we're going to try to work on our game this season.
Yeah.
So if you see some changes or hear some new things that you like, let us know.
Yeah, I'm excited about some of the changes that we've made. I hope you like them. Please let us know on social media if you do or don't.
We're more than willing.
So let's talk about our summer. Summer rundown. What did you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, I worked a ton. I finally took, so from my 2 jobs that I have right now, I took a week off. I haven't had a week off in probably almost 2 years, like a full 7 days.
That's crazy.
I know. And I was like, I could not believe that it had been almost 2 years. And so I had the joy of hosting 2 of my nephews and took them camping in northern Idaho. And we had lakefront campsite. And I'm sorry, you get me in the woods, get me outside, and I'm like a whole new person. I'm up at 5 a.m., starting a fire, making coffee, chopping wood. It's like fucking heaven. I love it. Out on the water. So I got to treat myself a little bit. And it's been, to get on a more real note, it's been a big summer for me and my husband of working on our marriage. So last year, Amanda is all aware of me and my husband hit a really, really rough spot. And we actually split up for 2 months. And we've been working on our marriage and communication and kind of learning how to talk to each other better. And we've been getting closer. And I think one thing that we lost for a while was consideration of each other. You just get in such a habit of, oh, that's how they feel. That's how they feel. That's how they feel, that you stop asking.
Yeah.
And stop listening.
You stop checking in.
Exactly. And we had really done, and we've been together for 11 years now. So we really hit a rut and we've been slowly climbing out of that. And it's been a great summer of working on that. And I've been really happy with it.
Well, congrats on the work.
Yeah.
And on the vacation.
And it takes work.
It does. Marriage takes anybody. I mean, obviously you hear that all the time, oh, marriage is so much work. But I think that because we talk about it, it's so vague. Mm-hmm. What do you mean when you say it's work? Well, for me, what happens is when you're with somebody for a long time, you change in small ways that you don't even sort of put on the radar, and so does that other person. And sometimes those changes don't go well together. Mm-hmm. And you find yourself one day realizing that you're not on the same page anymore, and you have to figure out, are we so far away? Are we on such different pages that we can't come back together? Or is there a path forward where this new version of me and this new version of this person can still be together? And that is not easy work, folks.
No.
And if you have the means and the availability, couples counseling is for everyone.
Yes.
From the beginning when things are great to the rough parts when things are not, to the moment when you decide this may or may not be the place for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that we did do. We reached out for professional help. So we started seeing a couples counselor. I started seeing my own personal therapist. And it was making those appointments every week and going and talking before and talking after and talking that same night. And man, we've talked a lot. It's really awesome, though. It's if you find that person that's worth it, I think, and especially if you feel like you're worth it too, I think that's more important. It works.
Yeah, totally.
So how was your summer, Amanda?
Busy.
Yeah. She did a lot of things.
I did. So in June, we went to New York City for World Pride, which was fucking amazing, obviously.
It looked magical.
There were 4 million extra people in town. just for pride. And that was just an incredible experience. I've always wanted to go to New York. I, in fact, applied for and got into graduate school at NYU and then couldn't go because they didn't really offer me any financial aid. But it was my lifelong dream. That's where I wanted to live when I was a kid. And I never made it there. And I never even made it there to visit. So it took me until I was 35 to go to New York City. But it was an incredible experience. And I'm so, so glad we did it. And then we went and visited my wife's family after that because she's from Pittsburgh. So if we make the trip all the way to the east side of the country, we are obligated to see family. I think we would be written out of wills if we didn't.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun experience too. We got to see a lot of the family we haven't seen in a long time. And all of the kids, we haven't seen the nieces and nephews for all of them all together, maybe ever.
Yeah, and Amanda's a baby fiend.
Oh, I am,
So
and
she
there were
got her
two
baby
babies.
She got her baby time in.
There were two babies, and I got to hold them. And one of the babies, our nephew Trip, is like the best baby I've ever held in my life. And there were moments when his mom, Abby's sister, wanted to take him away and do baby things, like feed him or whatever. And I was like, no.
Amanda would end up on one of those posters. Have you seen this woman?
Have you seen this woman and this baby? Yeah, I really did have just a blast doing that. And then we were home for just a couple of weeks. And then we finally, we sold our business. And I mentioned in previous podcast episodes that our business was in the beer industry, but I don't think I ever explained it. We owned a mobile canning business, which meant that we drove around the entire region and put product into cans. So if you went to the local grocery store and wanted to buy local beer, we probably put that beer in that can because breweries can't really afford the initial investment in all of that equipment. So we provided that for them. It was a really great service, but it was really inconsistent. And that became a really big financial strain on our relationship. As we were talking about marriage earlier, that was a really big burden in our marriage. And Abby was the one who ran it full time. And she just was getting to the point where she's like, I don't love doing this and I don't want to do it anymore. And we decided to get out of it. So we tried to sell it to a brewery or someone in the area. And that didn't work out. But there was a guy in New Orleans who wanted it. So we finalized all that paperwork. And then we drove from Spokane, Washington to New Orleans, Louisiana. And Abby then spent a couple days training them. I spent those days doing whatever the fuck I wanted to do in New Orleans, another city that had been on our bucket list that we had never been to. So that was just really cool to knock both of those out in the same summer. And one was unexpected. Plus, we got a really long road trip out of the way.
I feel like for both of us, we got a little bit of release in some of the strains that were in our lives last year.
Yeah, it feels like a new beginning in a lot of ways. And I'm really hoping, because the business really did put a lot of strain on our marriage, I'm really hoping that we have a new opportunity now to move forward and try different things and put our life back together and listen to each other better. So that's our goal this year.
Sweet. Sounds like good goals.
I know.
And it's been I could say now that school's starting again, so glad to get my kid out of the fucking house. I was like, you're driving me crazy.
Okay, so now that we've gotten our summer stuff out of the way, we just want to welcome you back to the podcast. I want to remind you guys that we are really, really devoted to making this a really good podcast. And we sent out a couple of polls for people to do on our social media to try to figure out what's working for you and what isn't. And one thing we decided to do was try to streamline our episodes a little bit better and kind of move forward and cut out some of the fat, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we're going to just get right into our stories today. What kind of story do you have? Is it fun, lighthearted?
Mine is my lady's a real go-getter, and it has to do with the military.
That is so weird.
Oh, no. So weird. Oh, God. Did we fucking sync up again?
No. I can't tell you what my woman is yet because that's part of my intro. But let's just say that they are probably oddly in sync with each other, which I find so weird. Guys, if this is your first time listening, we don't ever know who the other person is doing
Nope.
until we show up to record. So it's always like a gamble. Like, could we be bringing the same woman today? Who knows? Could they be like serendipitously related in some way? Totally.
Which we've had a couple that their lives have intertwined and we didn't even realize it. Yeah, until we were talking about it.
And this one is probably like, at least we're going to be talking about, I think, some similar things, maybe.
All right.
Maybe. Mine is long.
Mine's a little shorter. So, do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. So the woman that I'm bringing to the table today, Michelle Janine Howard.
I don't know her.
U.S. military officer who was the first woman to become a 4-star admiral in the U.S. Navy. Michelle also made history as the first African-American woman to be a captain of a U.S. naval ship.
Wow.
Yeah.
She already sounds incredible. I'm just so curious. I'm so excited.
So Michelle was born April 30th in 1960 in Riverside, California on March Air Force Base. Riverside in the 60s was very pretty. It was perfect, kind of picturesque California city. It had a really well-to-do metropolitan area, a really lucrative citrus economy. I mean, navel oranges were booming over there. And it was only 55 miles east of LA. So not a bad place to live. Kind of out of the way, but you could still go into the city if you wanted to.
Was it like was it on a beach? Is it beachy?
It was on a river.
Oh, I guess Riverside. Hello, Amanda.
I think it was the Santa Ana River.
Okay.
I might have to be corrected on that one. So Michelle's family was a military family. She was born to a British mother, Philippa, and her father, Nick, who served as a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. She grew up fairly traditional. Mom stayed at home, helped her with working on her education. Dad went and did his military stuff. She grew up deciding to follow in her father's footsteps. And she said that her interest in joining the military began when she was 12 years old. She did notice at that young age, though, that the opportunity for women to join the U.S. Military Academy was non-existent.
So was there a specific branch she was interested in?
Yes, she was interested in the Navy.
Yeah, that's really, I would say, a lot less friendly towards
women in general. Yeah. So luckily for Michelle, things changed in 1975 when U.S. President Gerald Ford signed the Military Procurement Bill, which allowed the admission of women into military academies.
Nice.
So thanks to that bill, while she was still in high school, Michelle was able to apply to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. When she entered the academy at 18 years old in 1978, she was only one of 7 women in a class of 1,363.
Yeah. One of 7. But I mean, to be fair, okay, so you said that bill was passed in 1965 or 75?
The bill was passed in 1975.
And what year did she graduate high school?
She joined the academy and graduated high school in 1978.
Okay, so I mean, I guess there was only 3 years. There probably wasn't a whole lot of buildup yet.
No. So amazingly, while she was only in her sophomore year of the academy, she piloted her first ship. It was called the destroyer USS Spruance. And during a summer training cruise, she was one of the first women ever to receive this chance. And she was only 20 years old.
Wow. Yep. We're going to have some parallels here. My girl did some stuff young too.
She would go on to graduate in 1982 with a degree in mathematics, and she would be commissioned as an ensign in the Navy. So I was like, what is an ensign? So I looked that up.
I totally had to cock my head to the side thing that dogs do when they don't get something. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
So an ensign is basically you're entering in as a basic, lowest rank. It's a junior commission rank in the armed forces. So it's your starting point. Her first sea tour was aboard the USS Hunley from 1982 to 1985. I was born in 84, so I like that this woman is in my lifetime. And then she moved on to the USS Lexington in 1985, going on to 1987. So while she was on board the Lexington, she received the Secretary of the Navy League Captain Winifred Collins Award.
That was a lot of words. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
I took my time with it. So this award is actually given to only one woman officer a year for outstanding leadership.
Okay. And when was this?
She got the award in 1987.
When was the award created? Like, because if women weren't allowed in until the 70s.
So if she went in 1978 and she received the award in 1987, I don't know when the award began, but it had to be within that 10-year span.
Yeah, that's when I was like,
I would imagine that women would have to start being recognized. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow, they're actually doing something. Yeah.
I wonder if there was like, you know how like during World War II, they had the Women's Auxiliary Service.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if at some point in that time, if there wasn't like people who were in, women who were in armed forces but weren't allowed to be recognized as doing the things that they were actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading a book about that right now.
What?
About this young woman who is not supposed to be a pilot because they don't allow women to be pilots, but she was an incredible pilot. And so they just turned a blind eye.
Well, thank God for the people who turn blind eyes, but thank God more for the people that actually will honor you
change the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Michelle really excelled in leadership roles. A few years later, in 1990, she was able to report as a chief engineer aboard the USS Mount Hood, and she served in the Persian Gulf War.
Wow.
She served during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. After serving in the Gulf War, she became first lieutenant on board the USS Flint in 1992. She would serve in that role for 4 years. And so I know that the year gaps are a little spaced out, but I mean, she's serving at this time. So it takes a long time to move up in the ranks in the Navy.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, her doing tours and actually seeing action, that's how she's being able to go further and further up the ranks.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
In 1996, she became an executive officer of the USS Tortuga. I love that name because that means turtle in Spanish. And I did look up these ships that she was on. They are those ginormous, huge, like aircraft carrier. I mean, they're fucking huge. It looks like the ships from like Star Wars. Like they're just huge.
Yeah, they're like the ones that you see in the news.
Yeah.
But you like, I've never seen one of them in person.
I've never seen one either. She was deployed to the Adriatic in support of Operation Joint Endeavor. It was actually a peacekeeping effort with the former Republic of Yugoslavia, as well as embarking on a West African training cruise where the ship and herself operated with naval services with 7 African nations.
Oh, interesting.
Not only was Michelle hard at work on the ships, she was hard at work being back at school at this time as well.
Really?
Yeah. So during this time, she was also attending the Army's Command and General Staff College, and she graduated in 1998 with a master's in military arts and sciences.
That's impressive.
I know. So
arts and sciences.
Yeah. So she's super into tactical stuff.
Okay.
So
Because I'm like, I was just thinking like, what is military art?
So after those 2 significant tours and graduating, Michelle went further than any woman of color and any woman, period, in U.S. naval history. In 1999, she took command of her own ship, the USS Rushmore. And she became the first African-American woman to captain a U.S. naval ship. She was only 39 years old.
Holy shit.
So it's 20 years in the making since she accepted her U.S. Naval Academy position when she was 18.
I'm 36. I've got this podcast, so I guess I'm really on my way.
So jumping ahead a little bit, in early 2004, she was the commander of, this name is weird, Amphibious Squadron 7, which aided in relief from the aftermath of the Indian Ocean tsunami. Do you remember that tsunami in 2004?
Do you remember the story about the model who was caught in that?
No.
Yeah, she was there with like her fiance or husband or something. I don't know. They were on vacation and the tsunami hit and she like held onto a tree for days.
Oh my gosh.
And they finally found her. And of course she was already thin because she was a model and she was like completely emaciated. And her fiance or whatever was never found.
Oh.
It was just one of those stories that I just recall because I just had this image of this like frail woman gripping a tree. And I mean, it was like 6 or 7 days
Jeez.
that she was like stuck up
that
there.
That tsunami was devastating.
It
and
was.
I remember that.
Yeah. It was like, yeah. I mean, there's still they're still trying to
Well, it
rebuild.
took off. I mean, it changed the geographic landscape of that shore.
What a tragedy.
Yeah. So Michelle was actually there, and she was providing aid and relief. So she didn't stop there. Michelle made history again when she became the first African-American woman to lead a U.S. Navy battle group.
Oh.
So she took command of an expeditionary strike group, which performed anti-piracy operations in the Indian Ocean.
Oh.
So sailors under her leadership rescued Richard Phillips, the captain of the container ship that was captured by Somali pirates.
Yes.
Do you remember the movie?
Yes. Well, no, I don't remember the movie. I remember when that happened.
Yeah. Well, I remember when that happened, and then Tom Hanks made a movie, and Michelle actually made a small appearance in the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't actually watch that movie, but now I want to watch it and see if I can see her
where
in
she's
it.
at. So Michelle wasn't done changing history. In 2014, she became the first woman promoted to the rank of 4-star admiral in the U.S. Navy.
Wow.
That same day, upon receiving her rank, she was also appointed the 38th Vice Chief of Naval Operations, making her the second highest ranking officer in the entire U.S. Navy.
Whoa.
I know.
Whoa.
I was like, from 18 years old to she's number 2, like
In the whole
in
Navy.
the entire Navy.
Wow.
In 2016, she became commander of naval forces in Europe and in Africa. Michelle just recently retired in 2017. I had to write this in on my notes because I found this a little bit later. She just got a job as a visiting professor at George Washington University. She's teaching cybersecurity and international policy.
Wow.
And she was also hired by IBM to be part of their board of directors.
I'm so curious about her cybersecurity class. Can I take it remote?
Can we just talk about it? I looked at her awards. There was 20 of them.
Yeah.
So she ranked that up. So 20 awards, medals, and badges. And like all those like little colored and the ribbons and stuff. So she got 20 of those on her chest.
It's probably like the entire left side of her. Is it on the left side?
I think it's on the left side.
It's on their left, our right. Yeah, her entire left side of her breast. It's just covered.
She's got 5 honors, some which include 2008, she was recognized as a Woman of Color, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, so STEM award for a Career Achievement Award. And in 2011, the USO Military Woman of the Year. And in 2013, the Chairman Award at the 44th NAACP Image Awards.
Mm.
I watched this really great YouTube video of her. It's called Change, Diversity, and Success. It's a little clip of that talk that she gave. And she speaks of how, so back when I said she first was sparked as a child of wanting to be in some kind of military, she said one of the shows that her mother allowed her to stay up late and watch was Star Trek. Because she said her mom loved the science of it all. And she goes, and of course, Uhura, she's like, Uhura was my girl. And so this is like a direct quote from her. She says, Uhura was my gal. No one was doing what Uhura was doing. But the biggest thing, Uhura was part of a team. She was being treated as an equal. If you think about what was happening in my country in the 60s, it was pretty important for me to see. And so she's talking about how, as a young girl, seeing somebody that she identifies with, especially as a person of color, that is so important.
Yeah, and on a ship and in a leadership position.
Exactly.
Especially if that's her dream. I can totally relate those two together. I can see how that would be so impactful.
And I think that's why we need to see like stuff for kids on TV where they can see themselves as people of color or queers or gays or trans, or like we have to start making that more just the norm. Because if you see that, you're like, oh, wow, I can do that too. Or I can be that, or I can dream of this.
Yes. Yes, totally.
She did have a husband. Very little about him. I know
Same with mine.
His name is Wayne. Wayne Cowles. He's a retired Marine at the moment. So she married a Marine. She did not take his name. And this last quote is from her. I really like this. You don't have to wait until you get the job to prepare for it. Oh. So it's like, go for it. You never know what's going to happen. So that's my lady.
What was her name again?
Michelle Janine Howard.
Michelle Janine Howard.
Is she still alive today?
Is she still in the Navy?
No, she's retired from the Navy, but
Okay.
she's part of the IBM board of directors, and then she's teaching that.
Okay. I didn't know if she was doing that concurrently or if she had retired and then went
She
on.
retired in 2017, and then she's
So how old is
still.
she now? She was born in 60?
She's 59.
Okay. Yeah, so she's still young.
She's young.
I can't believe I will never be able to retire.
But one of the requests that we had gotten from one of the polls we did on social media was somebody from like within the past 30 years or 50 years. And so that was my goal for this one.
I had already decided to do somebody that was more recent. So same with mine.
Nice.
I'll just transition right into mine.
All right.
So I'm going to introduce to you.
Okay.
Maya Lin.
I don't know her.
All right. That's what I thought. Maya Lin is an important and accomplished American architect who designed one of the most controversial and celebrated memorials in the United States.
Oh, what's the memorial?
You'll see.
Okay. Can I guess?
No.
Well, fuck.
Also, I thought you'd be interested in her because she was an architect.
Yes.
Or is an architect.
And Rita secretly wants to. I'm like George Costanza on Seinfeld. I just pretend I'm an architect when I'm out of town.
You should just show up to architect conferences with like a briefcase and a smart suit and just listen in and go, yes.
Angles.
And what about that trajectory? Okay. Maya Lin was born October 5th, 1959 in Athens, Ohio to Chinese immigrant parents who fled China just before the communist takeover in 1949.
Oh, she's Chinese.
She's Chinese American. She was born in America, in Athens, but her parents are Chinese immigrants. Her father, who was named Henry Huan Lin, was a ceramist and also so he was a ceramic artist, right? And just he just kept rising up. He became a professor and then eventually became a dean and then the dean of the entire college at the Ohio University College of Fine Arts. Her mother was named Julia Chan Lin, and she was a poet and professor at Ohio University as well. But her her dad's journey from China to the United States, Maya didn't really talk about much, but she did talk about her mother's journey, which was that her mother was actually smuggled onto what she called a junk boat, and I'm not sure what that meant.
Oh my gosh.
But it was in the Shanghai harbor. So her
Maybe
mother
like
is
a scrap boat, like scrap iron.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
like
is that it's like scraps.
Yeah.
So her mom gets smuggled on board onto this ship in the Shanghai harbor while the harbor is being bombed.
Oh, geez.
So her mom barely escapes with her life and does this treacherous journey across the ocean to get to the United States. And her uncles, Maya's uncles, who were then young men, were supposed to follow her mother shortly after, but they didn't think that the communist takeover was going to be, one, so permanent, and two, so intense, and they never made it over.
No.
Because they got shut out. And when her mother arrived in the U.S., all she had was her suitcase and a $50 bill sewn into her dress.
Wow.
Or I guess it was into her coat. And she never was able to see her family ever again because they had shut down entrance, because she was a deserter and therefore was not allowed to come back.
Yeah, if she came back, she'd probably be in big trouble. Yeah.
Well, and she wouldn't be able to leave again.
Yeah.
So Maya's Chinese lineage was actually really impressive. Like her family came from pretty well-known, high-ranking people, especially her father's line. He actually had ties to the second Guangzhou uprising and also to the Qing dynasty. Her grandfather was actually the emperor's teacher at one point.
Oh my goodness.
So it seems really natural to me that Maya's destiny would become equally important in the United States. As a child, she was a really great student. She was voracious when it came to learning and schoolwork and reading. And in fact, when she got to high school, when she had free time, she would take classes at Ohio University. So as like a teenager, she's taking college level courses, like
Wow.
auditing them.
Hmm.
So she would just show up and like sit in the class and learn things and then do the homework for that class, but never get any credit.
Oh, jeez.
I know. She grew up Asian in a primarily white community in Ohio. And she said that she didn't find her way to her Chinese culture until she was an adult. So this is what she said about what it was like to be Chinese in Ohio. I think my parents were definitely wanting us to assimilate. My brother and I were the only Chinese Americans in a small Midwestern community. I mean, all I wanted to do was to fit in. I remember there was a classmate when I got to high school who was Eastern European, and he wasn't allowed to speak English at home. He had to speak the mother tongue at home. And I always felt sorry for him. And she later talks about how she didn't learn Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And that contrast, right, of like this classmate was required to be connected to his homeland or whatever.
Yeah.
And her family was very much the opposite. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we are Americans, you speak English, like that is who we are.
We are not going to be different.
Yeah. Maya graduated from high school in 1977 and enrolled at Yale University, because she was a smarty pants, as an undergraduate where she studied architecture. At Yale, she was asked to join the Asian American Society, which made her uncomfortable.
Really?
Yeah, she said that growing up, she looked out and everyone she saw was always white. And so she'd worked really hard to fit in with white people. And joining the club would mean defining herself as Asian, which she really struggled with. Maya said it took her another 20 years to really understand her identity as both a Chinese person and an American person. And soon enough, Maya's identity as an Asian woman would become impossible to ignore as she fell under an intense nationwide spotlight.
Oh, no.
Dun, dun, dun. During her last semester of college, Congress announced there would be a competition for the design of a memorial commemorating the Vietnam War and its veterans. Instead of having a committee nominate some prominent American designers and then they have them commission designs from them or whatever, they decided to make the memorial competition an anonymous, open competition that anyone could apply for. You didn't have to have a certain degree.
How it always should be.
Yeah, and like they were taking it from anybody. You could be just Joe Schmo with a house and be like, I want to design a memorial. So her senior architecture class, it's her last semester of college. Her architecture class decided that they would use this competition as a final assignment.
Oh.
So everybody in her class was coming up with a design. After going to bed one night thinking about her design and what it should look like, she woke up the next morning with one thought. Let's cut open the earth. Yeah. Maya wanted the memorial to unite the past with its present. So the memorial was supposed to consist of slabs of black granite placed into the earth, with each end of the memorial coming to a point. So they kind of have like, it's almost like a triangle where the middle is the right angle and then it goes down to a point. So there were basically two of those. And each of those points pointed to memorials where it was situated between. So on one point, it was pointing to the Lincoln Memorial, and on the other point, it was pointing to the monument to World War II. And the granite that she wanted was to be black granite and polished so smooth that it would become almost like a mirror. And she wanted the pieces of granite to be inscribed with the names of all of the veterans who died during the Vietnam War, as well as those who were missing in action and presumed dead. When she finished the design for her class, she submitted it for the competition. So I don't think they were required to, and I'm not sure that everyone in her class did, but she did submit her design. When so the competition was anonymous, as I said, and she was assigned a number. Her number was 1026. So the committee received her drawings, and along with her drawings, she included an explanation of the meaning of her drawings and what she wanted. And this is what she wrote. I had a simple impulse to cut into the earth. I imagined taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up, an initial violence and pain that in time would heal. The experience of the monument would help people come to terms with the death of their loved ones.
It's really intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's wanting to also invoke emotion rather than just visual.
Yeah, it's not just like, hey, we're going to put up a statue.
Exactly.
This is going to be an experience.
Mm-hmm.
When the committee chose her design out of thousands of other designs, they had no idea that they'd chosen the design of a 21-year-old Chinese American woman.
How is this gonna go?
Yeah.
I wonder.
What they did know was that the design was artistic and incredibly moving. They felt the power of what it could be when it came to fruition, and that's why they chose it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the winning design and its creator, Maya Lin, were revealed, many people expressed outrage, especially Vietnam veterans.
Really?
They felt, a lot of them, especially the veterans, felt the design was intended to be a black gash or a wound, and that the creator herself was anti-veteran and anti-Vietnam War. Yes, there was more than a little suspicion thrown at her, also because of her race.
Yeah.
The veterans who were calling for, who were upset about the design, they publicly called the design, quote, the black gash of shame. And many felt that it was purposely created in this way to recall all of that really traumatic coming home experiences that they had.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard about all of that.
When soldiers were coming home, they were not welcome, but it was not
people were spit on.
what they thought it was going to be.
They were called names. They were
A lot of
treated
them
like
were-
garbage. Some people refused service at restaurants if they were wearing their uniforms. It was really ugly.
That generation of veterans declined very fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had experienced and seen things that nobody had any comprehension of, because that was our first real modern war that everybody was, that all of these Americans had experienced. And no one really wanted to listen to their trauma either, because people were like, yeah, but you were killing children. And so there was a lot of really controversial, a lot of things happening about the Vietnam War that were just intense. And it was really a wound.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And I think that Maya's design in her intention was that, yes, there's this initial wound, but over time it heals. I thought that was really, really poetic and beautiful, and what we needed as a country. That's not exactly what they felt. So in order to try to appease these veterans groups, and there were also some really shitty members of Congress who were raising a lot of issues, and other public figures, do you know who Pat Buchanan is? Just racist, virulent, racist asshole of a politician.
Yeah.
He was one of the most vocal critics of it, of course. And strangely, Ross Perot.
Really?
Yeah. Who ran for president in the 90s. And he was just basically a Texas billionaire who had lots of thoughts. And because he had lots of money, he got to say them out loud.
Okay.
So he got to do that. And he actually went, I watched a clip of Ross Perot and Maya Lin on some news program. And they did that thing that they do now where they split screen people, but it was boxes.
Yeah.
And he was just being a dick. And here's this I just want to repeat, 21-year-old woman, young woman. She's barely not a teenager.
Yeah.
She is certainly not a public figure who knows the ins and outs of how to respond and take this kind of, I wouldn't even say criticism. It was more than criticism. It was insults.
Yeah.
So the committee was like, okay, well, let's hold an open public forum.
That always goes well.
That's going to go well, right? So they have these, some representatives from the Vietnam veteran groups come in, and they take the mic to express their outrage. So Maya's in this audience. She's not up in the front like the Congress people and the Vietnam veterans. She's just sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
She's 21 years old, and she's just starting out her what will become a brilliant career. And this is the moment. So I'm going to actually play an audio clip of this Vietnam veteran talking about how she feels. It's from a 1995 Oscar-winning documentary about Maya's life called Maya Lin, A Strong, Clear Vision. I'm going to show it. So I'm going to show the actual clip to Rita. You're going to hear the audio as a listener, but she's going to see the actual video. So I want her to describe after we're done watching it, what this looks like for Maya. So you guys will hear the audio, and then Rita will tell us what it looked like.
But when I saw the winning design, I was truly stunned. I thought that the most insulting and demeaning memorial to our Vietnam experience that was possible. I don't care about artistic perceptions. I don't care about the rationalizations that abound. One needs no artistic education to see this memorial design for what it is, a black scar. Black, the universal color of sorrow and shame and degradation in all races and all societies worldwide, in a hole, hidden as if out of shame, so that no Vietnam veteran who must spend the rest of his days in a wheelchair can ever visit it. As a Vietnam veteran who feels dishonored by the design that was declared the winner of the VVMF competition, I call on the United States Fine Arts Commission to reopen the selection process of the design competition and to require that the winning design be chosen by a jury composed exclusively of Vietnam veterans. Are we Vietnam veterans so blind? Are we so dumb? Will we be out-hustled again? Are we going to take this?
She looks so sad.
Doesn't she?
She looks heartbroken.
There's this moment at the end of the clip where she just bows her head. And she just looks so defeated.
Like maybe in her own mind, she's doubting herself.
Yeah.
She's like, maybe what I did was wrong.
Can you imagine being that young and having that kind of public pressure?
And not even, that wasn't the point.
What did you think about what he said about the black gash?
I want to see what the design looks like.
Yeah.
But the black gash and black is the color of the most, of sorrow and the most demeaning color of all. He said all races.
I know. And I was like,
what?
Oh man, that really hit me. I was like, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Yeah. Do you think, honestly, I can already hear your answer, but do you think it was primarily because she was Asian? When it was revealed.
When it was revealed that she was an Asian young woman, and I think all three of those things played a role, and I definitely think that the fact that she was Asian was a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to show another clip here in a minute where she talks about that. And again, so the clip I just showed is from the moment when this design competition was being talked about publicly. So she's only 21 in the clip that we just showed. But later on in the documentary, it's 1995. Mm-hmm. So she's no longer 21, and she's talking about what it was like in that time.
In that moment.
So we talk, and we're kind of talking about it now, but we talk a lot about how gender and race play into the perceptions that people have of the women that we cover. There's no question that her status as a young woman, as a Chinese American, played into how people responded to her. And in fact, when this clip continues, which we're not going to make you listen to just ominous music, but the images that are shown after that are images that were in actual newspapers at that time. Some of them are editorials, some of them are letters to the editor, and some of them are shots of the political cartoons that were put in the paper. That meant that it passed through an editor and a publisher and still made it to the paper. And they are unabashedly racist and misogynist. They're awful. Depicting her with those the stereotypical slanted eyes and all kinds of just really, really, really
aggressive,
offensive material.
Aggressively offensive.
So because this happened not that long ago, we actually get to listen to her talk about things, and we get to listen to her respond to this. So I'm going to show you another clip, and the listeners are going to hear it. And this is what she had to say about all of this stuff. And I'm going to give just a little content warning here. Maya is going to say a racist slur that she was called during that time. So if that kind of stuff upsets you, I would say it's going to be about 30 seconds. So just go past that 30 seconds.
Okay.
And it took me months to realize, obviously, a lot of people are going to be extremely offended that
the creator of the American Vietnam Veterans, is not only not a veteran, but she is an Asian. And I did ask the veterans group I was working with, did mail come in? Did criticism come in? And sure, I mean, there was obviously letters saying, how can you let a gook design the memorial?
Wow. It's kind of, after that, it's undeniable. It's what they saw of that she is a she and she is an Asian. It was unacceptable because it's supposed to be American, and America only looks a certain way to a lot of people.
And that way is
white.
And male.
And male.
Eventually, there was so much uproar about her design, enough that the committee decided they had to do something. But her memorial was already under construction, so they weren't going to undo what was happening, and they weren't going to undo the decision to choose her design. Instead, they decided to install another monument next to hers. And it's in the same area, and it's a lot more traditional. It's a big bronze sculpture of three men in like the thing you imagine when you think of Vietnam, you know, of like
probably in their greens.
Yes. And they're like sweating and they've got the bandoliers across their chest. So it's three men. Now I'm told one was white, one was Hispanic, and one is black. One is visibly black, one is visibly white. And I thought the other guy was white, but someone said online somewhere that it was a Hispanic guy. And I was like, like a Hispanic white guy? Because that's a thing. So
like a Spaniard?
But I've actually seen the monument in person. A couple of summers ago, I went to DC and I went to the Vietnam Memorial, and I was surprised and a little taken aback by how moving it was, because I didn't expect to be moved by it. I just sort of like was checking it off the list of touristy shit to do. But it is truly a really profoundly moving memorial. So when you walk up to it, so when she says that she wanted to open up the earth, what happens is when you're walking, you're on like regular ground, and then you start to slant downwards on a little, like, just gradually going towards the center of the earth. It's what you feel like. And the memorial, though, stays at the same height as the rest of the earth around it. So you go down, but the memorial kind of stays at the same place. And as you walk, there's like the little points that go all the way to the end of the earth. There's like a couple of names, and then the names just start compiling and multiplying until eventually, when you're in the middle, the slab of granite is 10 feet tall, and bottom to top, side to side, names.
Whoa.
And just the sheer immensity of names is overwhelming. And like I told you earlier, that the granite it's really, really polished. So when you're standing there, your eyes kind of play tricks on you, where you can focus on a name, but then your eyes kind of focus on you, your reflection, and then back to the name and back to you. And there's this sort of like liminal quality where it's like you're part of this, you're here on this earth and they're part of this earth, but they're not, and you can't be quite part of them because they're gone.
They're gone.
And all that's left is their name. It's really moving.
Wow.
I found it to be,
Quite
cool.
Brilliant.
And as of May 2018, there were 58,320 names inscribed on the granite. When you stand in front of it, you can really see a lot. And what a lot of people do, there's this ritual that people started doing. And I don't know that this was her intention. Maybe it was. I don't know. I didn't find that information. But what people started to do almost from the beginning, when it was finally unveiled, is people would find their loved one's name and take a piece of paper and like a wax crayon or a pencil, and they would
they would like take a stencil of the name.
Yeah, and they would rub it onto their piece of paper, and then they would take that piece of paper home and they would have it forever. And this ritual has been, if you go there on any given day, you will watch people doing it. I tried to find the name of somebody that from my family that I knew had died in Vietnam, but I couldn't find their name. But I was going to do that. And it's actually kind of crazy because the memorial now is extremely popular. It receives around 3 million visitors a year, and it's one of the most revered memorials in the world, and it actually was ranked number 10 on the list of America's favorite architecture in 2007.
So when the man was petitioning for it to be reopened and then put in front of a panel of veterans, did that ever happen?
No.
Or they just said, this is our decision. This is what it was. Okay.
But to appease them, they had this other monument created. And then eventually there was a third monument that was added that had to do with the women who had been in Vietnam. And I didn't really look too much into that one because I didn't want to get sidetracked. But I think that would be an interesting thing for someone to take a look at, is that they had to add a women's monument because the other one only contained the names of men. So after the memorial was finished in 1982, Maya went back to school. And I can imagine that that's immediately what she would want to do, like to be under that kind of public scrutiny and then to try to go out and into the world and create things that, and everybody knows your name and you haven't even really been able to prove yourself yet. So she went back to school, and this time she went to Harvard for their graduate architecture program. But she actually left when a Boston architecture firm came and was like, oh, we want you to have this great job. And she was in the job for only like a couple of years before she decided she really did want to finish her studies, but she didn't want to go back to Harvard. So she went back to Yale. And she did graduate with her master's in 1986. Guess how old she is?
How old is she?
27.
Oh my gosh.
So Maya Lin, though, at this point, after the air had cleared and the memorial became very popular and highly revered, she became a hot commodity. People really, really, really wanted her to be the creator of their memorials.
Really?
Yes. So her next big project was designing the Civil Rights Memorial for the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama.
Wow.
And this monument is a curved granite wall, and it has a quote on it from MLK that says, "Until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream," which is one of my favorite quotes from his I Have a Dream speech. In front of that is a granite disc, and it's flat, and it looks almost like a clock face because it's like flat and round. And then on it is inscribed all of the important events from the civil rights movement and the names of people who died for the cause. And then it tapers down into a point underneath. And there's water that flows over the top of the disc and sort of cascades into a small pool. So there's this like sort of serenity to it. And I'm not sure what she meant for the symbolism of the water to be, but it's apparently a very popular one. People really liked it. And as you can see now, like she talked about having this healing journey for the Vietnam Memorial Monument, and now she's working on a civil rights monument. You might have picked up that at this point, she's really into the ideas of oppression and equality and things like that. So she continues to work on monuments that sort of have something to do with that. So another very famous work that she did is called the Women's Table, and that's at Yale. And it's a memorial dedicated to the women who attended Yale. And it's a flat green granite circle that looks like a round dinner table. And on top are numbers inscribed in a spiral. And the numbers start at 0 because in the beginning, Yale was a men's only college.
Oh.
And then the numbers grow as they spiral outwards. They basically are like, this many women attended this year, this many attended this year. And it just keeps going. And she intended for the spiral to have a beginning, but no end.
That's awesome.
I know. I just love her ideas. And once again, there's water that comes from the center of the monument and flows over the table. And this leads into sort of what becomes her next big movement in architecture is she becomes really, really involved with and fascinated by water and the earth and the environment. So from the 90s on, she created designs that incorporated elements of the earth. One of these was a series of these things called wave fields, and she put them in a couple different locations. One is in like Florida, one's in another state. And they are crazy to look at. They are like actually like a field of grass. Like imagine just a field of grass. But instead of it being a flat field of grass, it's like these waves that have like the earth has been manipulated to become a wave. but the grass is just growing like it normally does.
Yeah.
It's really cool looking. And because we're Pacific Northwest based podcast, I wanted to mention one of her biggest designs was called the Confluence Project, which was during the bicentennial celebration of Lewis and Clark's journey westward. The tribes here in the state of Washington were like, we can't just celebrate these white guys who ended up bringing all of these white people who destroyed our culture and our land. There should be something celebrating what was here before. So what she did is all along the Columbia River, there are 6 installations in various sites along the river. And they detail the historic impact that Lewis and Clark's journey had on indigenous land and water. And they have a really great website. Again, it's called the Confluence Project. And they detail all of the sites that she designed on this journey. But the one I'm like, I have to go see, it's called the Bird Blind. And it's on the Sandy River Delta, which is just across the border from Washougal and just outside Troutdale, Oregon. And there she built this like elliptical bird blind. It's like a circle type thing. And it's a series of vertical wooden slats, like really thin ones, almost like boards in old floors, like old wood floors in Spokane. It's these tiny wood slats that are vertical, and each of the slats, because she's really into inscription, each of the slats is inscribed with the name of a species that Lewis and Clark documented on their journey. But instead of just having the name of the species, it also includes their current status.
Oh.
Yeah. So there are 134 species. Some of them now, many of them now, are endangered or extinct. And her last memorial, she calls it the last memorial, is called What is Missing? And it was a project designed to highlight the habitats and species that are dying or disappearing. And I because I couldn't find a lot of photos of it, I decided that I was going to use somebody else's description instead of mine. So this is the description from the Academy of Achievement. They said the project is a multi-sided work that encompasses a book, an online presence, and installations at multiple scientific institutions. It is an investigation of habitat loss and the biodiversity crisis. I love that she is
creating awareness. Yeah.
She's using her art and her technique to bring awareness of really important things in our world. And just like your woman, mine has won a ton of awards and distinctions. So I'm not going to talk about every one of them because that would be like another half hour of me just listing her resume. But I do want to highlight a couple of the major ones. In 2005, she was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame and the American Academy of Arts and Letters. She also received the National Medal of Arts in 2009, and in 2016, still my president, Barack Obama, bestowed upon her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which, as we've talked about before, is the highest honor a civilian can receive. So we often talk about the personal lives of our subjects, their marriages, their children. I mean, we went on forever about Dolores Huerta. But Maya Lin, like
Michelle
Howard, what's her middle name?
Janine.
Janine. I was going to say Janelle.
She goes
but
by
that's wrong.
Michelle J. Howard.
Michelle J. Howard. A girl after my own heart. I love my simple letter in the middle. So we often talk about that, but Maya Lin is, I guess, pretty private when it comes to her family because I didn't find a lot of information about that. So this is what I can tell you about her personal life. It's very short. Maya Lin lives in New York City with her husband, Daniel Wolf. Again, did not take his name. He's a photography dealer, and they have 2 daughters, India and Rachel.
Done.
The end. That's all we know.
I looked too, and I didn't find, I don't know if she has siblings. It did not seem like she had kids. She's on that ship a lot.
Yeah. And I was like, Maya Lin, there's so much about her. I mean, so many interviews. There's a whole documentary. I mean, I looked and I read a lot, and she did talk a lot more about in like some of her later interviews about what it was like being a Chinese American and her family and connection to China. But that's the only extent of personal stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes that stuff's just off limits.
Yeah, she just
Especially if like being like victimized so young or attacked,
Mhm.
it's like, wouldn't you want to protect your daughters or your family,
yes.
from that?
And I also wonder, like, we end up talking a lot about women's personal lives on here, but I bet if a podcast was talking about men in history, they probably didn't do a whole lot of that. They probably did what I just did. He was married to Jane and had 3 kids. The end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it was actually a little refreshing to me to be able to talk about Maya Lin and not talk about her marriages and messiness and whatever. I'm kind of glad I didn't know any of that. And they're still married, so obviously it can't be that messy.
Yeah.
I want to leave you with one thing, and that's Maya talking to, there's a website called Makers that has all of these great videos of people who make things.
Yes.
Yes, if you haven't visited, you should definitely go. So I want to leave you with Maya talking to Makers about what it was like to be a woman in a male-dominated industry and her advice for women and people of color. So I'm going to this is our last little clip.
For the first 5 years or even 10 years within the profession, I would almost always be the only woman in the room. I have been patted on the head. One firm decided to put out milk and cookies for me. And again, I was young and I looked even younger. I have a very low voice. In meetings, my voice drops actually a little lower. I would actually dress in Carhartts, working boots. I would look tougher. The lessons we can learn are always persevere, never ever give up. We are still in a world where you see a lot of, I'll say it, it's like suppression because of our race and our gender. So don't become complacent, I think, especially now.
I like it. I like the advice.
I do too. Don't become complacent, especially not now.
And don't stop.
Yeah,
I
never
saw
stop.
that with Michelle's career. She wasn't done.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And she didn't let, you didn't go into that, and maybe she doesn't ever talk about it, but it's
she didn't go too much into it. Yeah.
I would imagine the amount of racism and misogyny and sexism that she faced on a daily basis would be enough to break a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that women who face all of that and continue forward anyway, that's why we do this podcast. Because it's hard to just get up every day and continue doing it and hearing it. I'm not going to make Rita talk about it, but she experienced a thing this summer that was really, really awful with somebody that she trusted saying something racist and not recognizing that it was racist and actually like pushing back.
Defending it.
Yeah, defending it and actually accusing you of being racist.
Yeah.
Because you were upset that white people do these things. And I think it's a reality that you have to face all the time, and it can be exhausting.
Yeah, and it can be heartbreaking, soul crushing.
Yeah. And to just like continue like Maya and Michelle to have these goals and push against those things and just keep on going. I mean, the pat on the head.
Yeah. How condescending is that? It's like
The
a
milk
pinch on the cheek.
The
or
milk
something.
and cookies was worse though for me. Like she's a goddamn child.
Like she's a little girl.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But we still do it. We still kick some ass.
Out there every day.
So I'm going to tell you where I got my stuff from because we don't want to be like another podcast who just got recently in a lot of trouble for plagiarism. I used Wikipedia, both a biography of Maya Lin and also some information about the Vietnam Memorial. I used biography.com. PBS had a great series called Becoming American, and it was all of these Asian Americans over the course of a year.
Yes.
So I used the transcript from that. The Academy of Achievement, which I quoted earlier, Makers, which we just heard a clip from. And I also watched a really cool little video made by Khan Academy, which is for students like my son's age. But they had a neat little like video on the memorial that was great. And I used clips from Maya Lin, A Strong, Clear Vision, which was the documentary. And also Time had another collection called Firsts. So it's all people who were the first in something. So that's where I got my stuff.
My information came from Britannica.com. It's the biography of Michelle Howard. I got a little bit from Wikipedia. I went to one of my favorite websites, which is blackpast.org, African American History / Michelle Howard. I went to the Military Hall of Fame, where they've got, if you're interested in all of her awards and medals that she won, it's got them all 20 of them. Listen, it even has a photo of what they look like. It's huge. Like, it's like all this like different colors and stuff. It's just really neat. And then once again, that YouTube video of that talk that she was doing, it's called Change, Diversity, and Success.
Excellent. And we credit our sources here at I Don't Know Her so that we don't get in trouble. I want to thank you guys for listening and for sticking with us and for returning to us. And we really, really, really want to make this podcast an important part of the story that people are talking about. And we kind of need your help to do that. If you can, please, if you haven't already done so, please, please, please rate us and subscribe on whatever podcast
and share us with
platform.
Your friends.
Yes, please, please share. We would like to get an online store going in the near future, and perhaps, if possible, a Patreon, so that we can create more content and get more women's stories out there. But we can't do that if we don't have enough people who are out there listening and talking to us. So if you like what we do, please, please, please support us by subscribing, liking, sharing, talking to your friends about it, shout it from the rooftops, buy our merch when we get it out there. Please, please, please. We want to be able to continue to do this. But currently, we are both paying for this out of our own pockets. And ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, you know we are not wealthy. She and I both had the conversation right before we started recording about like how we were like sitting pretty in our bank accounts and excited that we had money left for the entire rest of the month, and then whoosh, some giant shit just comes and wipes it all out.
And then life comes in and sweeps it all away.
So please, if you want to hear more of this, please do like us, subscribe, and share. We want to thank our editor, Lucas McIntyre, who is a member of the band The Tourist Union and also has his own independent music career. Check him out online. You can also check us out online. We have our own website, idkher.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are on TuneIn and
Stitcher
and Spotify and everything in between. So please find us wherever you can find us. Share it with whoever you want to share it with. And we also want to thank Jennifer Finch
and L7
of L7 for our lovely, lovely, badass rockin' theme music.
All right, guys. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah. Bye. Maybe that's what our next podcast idea will be.
What noise is this?
Yeah. Is this an object or my butt?
A podcast hosted for 11-year-old boys.
We'd probably make better money.
I'm pretty sure we'd get a YouTube following.
Yes.